It was past midnight when the knock came. Not loud, not desperate, just weak. The Mafia boss frowned. No one knocked on his door without an invitation. Not here, not alive. He opened it halfway. A pregnant woman stood on the steps, soaked from the rain, one hand gripping the railing, the other pressed against her stomach. Her face was pale. Her legs were shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice barely holding together. "I didn't know where else to go." Behind her, the street was empty, too empty. The Mafia boss scanned her quickly. No weapon, no backup, no lie he could smell. Then he noticed the bruises on her wrist, the fear in her eyes, not of him, but of someone else. Before he could ask a single question, she collapsed forward. He caught her, and in that instant, the most feared man in the city realized this wasn't a plea for shelter. It was a race against time. Stay with me until the end, because what the Mafia boss uncovers about this woman and her unborn child will shake his world in ways no enemy ever could. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. Vincent Torino had spent 30 years building an empire from blood and concrete. His name alone could silence a room. His reputation could end careers, destroy families, erase entire bloodlines from existence. He was a man who commanded respect through fear, who solved problems with a phone call and a single word. But as he stood there in his doorway, holding this trembling woman who couldn't have weighed more than 120 pounds, something inside his chest twisted in a way he hadn't felt since childhood. Her breathing was shallow, rapid. Her skin felt cold despite the summer rain. Vincent's instincts, honed by decades of violence and betrayal, screamed that this was trouble. Every fiber of his being told him to close the door, walk away, forget this moment ever happened. Instead, he lifted her into his arms. The weight of her was nothing. The weight of the decision was everything. Vincent carried her through his mansion's marble foyer, past the oil paintings worth more than most people's homes, past the security monitors that showed empty streets in every direction. His footsteps echoed in the silence, each sound a reminder that he was crossing a line he'd never crossed before. He placed her gently on the leather sofa in his study, the same room where he'd ordered the deaths of 17 men, where he'd planned heists that made headlines, where he'd built his criminal empire one calculated move at a time. Now it held a pregnant woman who looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Vincent grabbed a blanket from the closet, one his late mother had knitted decades ago. As he wrapped it around the woman's shoulders, her eyes fluttered open. They were green, the color of sea glass, and filled with a terror so pure it made his stomach clench. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Don't let them find me." Them. Vincent's jaw tightened. In his world, them usually meant one thing: competition, enemies, people who thought they could take what was his. "Who's looking for you?" he asked, his voice softer than it had been in years. She tried to sit up, winced, pressed her hand to her stomach again. "I can't tell you. If I tell you, you'll be in danger too." Vincent almost laughed. Almost. The idea that anyone could put him in danger seemed absurd. He owned half the police force. The other half knew better than to cross him. Politicians took his calls. Judges ruled in his favor. He was untouchable, but something in her eyes made him pause. This wasn't the fear of someone running from petty criminals or abusive boyfriends. This was the terror of someone who'd seen what real power could do when it turned malevolent. "What's your name?" he asked instead. "Sarah," she whispered. Sarah Martinez. The name meant nothing to him, but Vincent filed it away anyway. In his business, information was currency, and every detail mattered. "When's the baby due?" 3 weeks. Her voice cracked. "Maybe less. I've been having contractions all day." Vincent felt that twist in his chest again. He'd never wanted children, never saw the point. His world was too dangerous, too unpredictable. Children were weaknesses, vulnerabilities that enemies could exploit. But looking at Sarah, Seeing the way she protected her unborn child even in her exhausted state, something primal awakened in him. A protective instinct he'd thought died with his innocence 30 years ago. "Have you eaten today?" She shook her head. Vincent walked to his kitchen, a space most people never saw. His housekeeper kept it stocked, though he rarely cooked. He heated soup, made tea, prepared a simple meal with hands that had broken bones and pulled triggers. When he returned, Sarah was sitting up, looking around the study with wide eyes. She took in the expensive furniture, the awards from legitimate businesses that served as fronts, the photographs of Vincent with politicians and celebrities. "You're really him," she said quietly. "Vincent Torino." He set the tray down carefully. "You know who I am." It wasn't a question. Most people in the city knew who he was, even if they'd never seen his face. "My brother used to work for you." She picked up the spoon with shaking hands. "Before he died." Vincent studied her face, searching for resemblance to any of the dozens of men who'd worked for him over the years. "What was his name?" "Miguel Martinez. He was killed 2 months ago." The name hit Vincent like a physical blow. Miguel Martinez. Young, eager, loyal to a fault. He'd been working a protection job when rival gang members decided to make a statement. Vincent had sent flowers to the funeral. He'd also sent a message to the rival gang that was delivered with bullets and gasoline. "Miguel was a good man," Vincent said quietly. "I'm sorry for your loss." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "He was trying to save money for the baby, working extra shifts. He said you paid fair wages, that you looked out for your people." She was right. Vincent did look out for his people in his own way. Loyalty was rewarded. Betrayal was punished. It was a simple system that had kept him alive and in power for 3 decades. But Miguel's death had been random violence, the kind of senseless brutality that plagued their world. There had been no way to prevent it, no warning signs to heed. "Who's after you, Sarah?" Vincent asked again, his voice harder now. "Who killed my man's sister?" The soup spoon clattered against the bowl as Sarah's hands began shaking violently. "They're not from here," Sarah finally whispered, her voice trembling like autumn leaves in a storm. "They came from Chicago 3 days ago. The Kozlov family." Vincent's blood turned to ice. The Kozlovs weren't just another gang. They were an organization that made his operation look like children playing with toy guns. Russian, ruthless, connected to networks that spanned continents and commanded resources most governments couldn't match. "What do the Kozlovs want with you?" Sarah pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, her knuckles white against the fabric. "I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. At the hospital where I worked. I'm a night shift nurse at St. Mary's." Vincent leaned forward. St. Mary's Hospital. He knew it well. It was where his own people went when they needed medical attention without questions, where cash payments bought silence and discretion. "What did you see?" "They brought someone in, a man, unconscious, barely alive." Sarah's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "The doctor who treated him. He's on their payroll. I heard them talking about organs, about selling them, about how this man was worth more in pieces than alive." The room fell silent except for the distant rumble of thunder outside. Vincent had dealt with many horrors in his career, but organ trafficking was a line he'd never crossed. It was messy, complicated, and attracted the kind of federal attention that could destroy empires. "You reported this?" Sarah shook her head frantically. "I tried to. I called the police, but before I could finish explaining, someone at the station cut me off. Told me to mind my own business. That's when I knew how deep this went." Vincent's mind raced through the implications. Corrupt cops weren't unusual, but the Kozlovs had clearly bought more than just silence. They'd purchased protection at the highest levels. "How did they find out you knew?" "The doctor saw me listening. He told them." Tears streamed down Sarah's face now. "They came to my apartment that same night. I barely escaped through the fire escape. I've been hiding for 3 days, sleeping in alleys, abandoned buildings. And you came here because?" Miguel always said if anything ever happened, if I was ever in real trouble, that you were the only person in this city who couldn't be bought. That you had your own code. Vincent stood up, walking to the window that overlooked his garden. Miguel had been right about one thing. Vincent couldn't be bought. But his code was simple. Protect what was his, destroy what threatened him. Sarah wasn't his to protect. Except she was Miguel's sister, and Miguel had died working for him. The thunder outside grew louder, and lightning illuminated the rain-soaked streets. Vincent's security cameras showed nothing unusual, but that meant little when dealing with the Kozlovs. They had resources, patience, and a complete disregard for collateral damage. Sarah, he said without turning around. The man they brought in. Did you see his face? Yes. He was young, maybe 25, dark hair. There was a tattoo on his arm. An eagle with spread wings. Vincent's heart stopped. The eagle tattoo was a mark he knew intimately. It was the symbol of his nephew's crew, the younger generation of his organization. Tommy Torino, his sister's boy, wore that exact tattoo. Did you hear a name? Any name at all? The doctor called him Thomas something. Thomas Torino. Sarah's eyes went wide. You know him. He's my nephew. Vincent's voice carried a deadly calm that made the air in the room feel electric. He's been missing for 4 days. The pieces fell into place, like bullets loading into a chamber. The Kozlovs hadn't just stumbled into Vincent's territory for a random organ trafficking operation. They'd taken his blood, his family. They were sending a message wrapped in the cruelest possible package. Vincent pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in months. It rang twice before a gruff voice answered. What do you want, Vincent? I need a favor, Marcus. Detective Marcus Romano had been Vincent's contact in the police force for over a decade. Their relationship was built on mutual benefit rather than corruption. Vincent provided information on rival gangs. Marcus provided warnings about federal investigations. I'm listening. The Kozlov family. What do you know about their current operations? There was a long pause. Vincent, you don't want to get involved with these people. They're not like the families you're used to dealing with. They're organized on a level that makes your operation look like a corner bodega. They have my nephew. Another pause. Longer this time. Jesus, Vincent. When? 4 days ago. They're using him for organ harvesting. That's impossible. The Kozlovs don't work that dirty. They're into high-end stuff. Money laundering, arms dealing, political corruption. Organ trafficking is beneath them. Then explain why my nephew is on an operating table at St. Mary's Hospital. St. Mary's? Marcus's voice sharpened. Vincent, St. Mary's was raided by federal agents 6 hours ago. The whole organ trafficking ring was shut down. 17 arrests, including 3 doctors and a dozen support staff. Vincent felt the world tilt beneath his feet. What about the patients? What patients? The place was clean when we got there. No patients, no evidence of recent surgeries, just paperwork and financial records. Sarah had been listening to every word, her face growing paler with each exchange. Vincent ended the call and turned to face her, his expression unreadable. Sarah, he said quietly, you're lying to me. She shrank back into the sofa, pulling the blanket around herself like armor. I'm not lying. I swear I'm not lying. St. Mary's was raided today. There were no patients, no organ trafficking, nothing. That's impossible. I was there 3 days ago. I saw everything. Vincent walked slowly back to his chair, his movements deliberate and controlled. In his world, lies were currency, and everyone was trying to buy something. The question was what Sarah was trying to purchase with hers. Let me ask you a different question, he said, settling into his seat like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. Who sent you here? Nobody sent me. I came because I was scared, because I had nowhere else to go. The bruises on your wrist. Who gave those to you? Sarah looked down at her arm, where purple marks were visible beneath the blanket's edge. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Not fear, but calculation. I told you. The men who are chasing me. What men, Sarah? The ones who don't exist. The organ traffickers who were never at St. Mary's. The Kozlovs who supposedly took my nephew. The room fell silent again. But this time the silence felt different, dangerous. loaded with unspoken threats and hidden agendas. Vincent had built his empire by reading people, by seeing through lies and manipulation, and every instinct he'd honed over 30 years was telling him that Sarah Martinez was not what she appeared to be. The question was whether she was a threat, a trap, or something far more complicated. Outside, the storm was intensifying, and Vincent realized that whatever game was being played, the real moves were just beginning. Vincent stood slowly, his chair creaking in the oppressive silence. The storm outside seemed to pause, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Sarah's eyes darted toward the door, then back to him, and in that split second of movement, Vincent saw it. The flinch wasn't fear of discovery, it was fear of failure. "You're very good," he said, his voice carrying the weight of 3 decades spent separating truth from deception. "But you made one mistake." Sarah's breathing quickened, her hand moving protectively over her stomach. "I don't know what you mean." "Miguel Martinez died 2 months ago. That part was true." Vincent began pacing, each footstep deliberate, measured. "But Miguel never had a sister." The color drained from Sarah's face completely now, leaving her looking like a ghost wrapped in his mother's blanket. Her lips parted, but no words came. Miguel was an orphan, raised in the system. No family, no relatives, no sister who could possibly be carrying his nephew or niece. Vincent's voice grew softer, more dangerous. "So let me ask you again, and this time I want the truth. Who are you, and who sent you here?" Sarah's composure cracked like ice under pressure. The trembling wasn't from cold anymore. It was from pure terror, but not the terror of someone caught in a lie. It was something deeper, more primal. "My name is Sarah," she whispered. "That part is true, but you're right. Miguel wasn't my brother." Vincent stopped pacing. "Go on." "I worked at St. Mary's. I am a nurse, but I wasn't lying about what I saw." Her voice grew stronger, as if speaking truth was giving her courage. "I did see them bring someone in, someone who looked like he belonged to your organization. But it wasn't your nephew." "Then who?" Sarah closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, Vincent saw something he hadn't expected. Genuine anguish, real pain that couldn't be faked. "It was my husband." The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun barrel. Vincent felt the familiar sensation of pieces clicking into place. But the picture they were forming was unlike anything he'd anticipated. "Your husband works for me?" "Worked." Sarah's voice broke on the word. "David Chen. He was one of your accountants. He handled the books for 3 of your legitimate businesses downtown." Vincent knew David Chen. Quiet, methodical, brilliant with numbers. He'd been missing for a week, and Vincent had assumed he'd simply decided to disappear with a portion of the organization's money. It happened sometimes. Good men got tempted by figures they saw every day but could never touch. "David's dead?" "Not dead. Worse." Sarah pulled the blanket tighter, as if it could shield her from the memories. "He discovered something in your books, something that wasn't supposed to be there." Vincent's blood chilled. His financial records were meticulous, clean, designed to withstand scrutiny from federal auditors and rival organizations alike. If David had found something that shouldn't exist, it meant someone had been very clever about hiding it. What did he find? Money moving through accounts that didn't match any business activity. Large amounts. Millions of dollars flowing in and out of your operations, but not from anything your people were doing. The implications hit Vincent like a physical blow. Someone was using his organization as a front, laundering money through his legitimate businesses without his knowledge. It was a violation so profound, so dangerous, that it could destroy everything he'd built. Who was moving the money? That's what David was trying to figure out when they took him. Sarah wiped tears from her cheeks with shaking hands. "He stayed late one night, going through everything. When he didn't come home, I went looking for him, and you found him at St. Mary's. I found him barely alive. They'd tortured him for information about what he knew, who he'd told." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "But David is stubborn. Even bleeding, even broken, he wouldn't give them what they wanted." Vincent felt a surge of respect for the quiet accountant, who'd been more loyal than he'd ever realized. So they decided to extract information another way. They brought in a specialist, someone who could get into his mind while he was unconscious. Drugs, techniques I'd never seen before. Sarah's medical training was evident in how she described the process. They were going to break down his mental defenses piece by piece until they found every detail of what he'd discovered. And you saw all this. I saw enough. I was working the night shift in the ICU when they brought him in. The doctor treating him wasn't one of ours, someone I'd never seen before. When I tried to check David's chart, to understand what was happening, that's when I overheard them talking. Vincent walked back to the window, watching rain streak down the glass like tears. Outside, his carefully ordered world continued as if nothing had changed. But inside this room, everything was shifting. Why didn't you come to me immediately? Because I didn't know if you were part of it. Sarah's honesty cut through the air like a blade. For all I knew, you were the one moving that money. You were the one who ordered David's torture. It was a fair assumption. In Sarah's position, Vincent would have suspected the same thing. Trust was a luxury few could afford in their world. But you came here anyway, because David managed to get a message to me. One word, whispered when the doctors thought he was unconscious. Sarah's eyes met Vincent's with fierce intensity. He said, Torino, not as an accusation, but as hope. He believed you didn't know. Vincent felt something crack open in his chest, a sensation he'd thought was buried with his capacity for genuine emotion. David Chen, tortured and broken, had still believed in him, had trusted him even when trust could mean death. What happened after you overheard them? I tried to document everything, take photos, record conversations. I thought if I could gather enough evidence, I could bring it to you or the authorities. Sarah's laugh was bitter. But they caught me. The specialist saw me listening at the door. And you ran. I ran. But not before I heard them talking about moving David somewhere else, somewhere they could work on him without interruption. Her voice cracked again. They said after they were done with him, they'd come for me, and for anyone else who might know what David had discovered. Vincent turned from the window, his mind racing through possibilities. Someone had infiltrated his organization at the highest levels, someone with access to his financial systems, his legitimate businesses, his most trusted operations. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. Sarah, I need you to think carefully. Did you recognize any voices? Any names mentioned? The specialist had an accent. Eastern European, maybe Russian. And the doctor kept deferring to someone he called the coordinator. But I never heard a real name. Russian accent. Vincent's thoughts immediately went to the Kozlovs. But Marcus had been right. This wasn't their style. They were too sophisticated for crude torture and medical interrogation. This felt more personal, more intimate. How long ago was this? 3 days. I've been hiding ever since, trying to figure out what to do. The only reason I came here tonight was because... She paused, pressing her hand to her stomach again. Because of the baby. The contractions started this afternoon. Real ones, not the false alarms I've been having. If I don't get to a hospital soon, I'm going to give birth on the street. Her voice broke with exhaustion and fear. But I can't go to St. Mary's, and every other hospital will want identification, insurance information. They'll find me. Vincent understood now why she'd taken such an enormous risk coming to him. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting her unborn child. It was a desperation that transcended logic, transcended fear of consequences. Is David the father? Yes. The word came out as barely a breath. This baby is all I have left of him. If they kill me, if they take my child. She couldn't finish the sentence. Vincent walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a secure phone. He dialed a number from memory, one that would connect him to resources few people knew he possessed. Dr. Reyes, it's Vincent. I need a favor. Dr. Elena Reyes ran a private clinic in the suburbs, one that catered to clients who needed medical care without paperwork or questions. She'd been treating Vincent's people for over a decade, and her discretion was absolute. What do you need? A pregnant woman in labor. She needs somewhere safe to deliver. When? Tonight. There was no hesitation in Dr. Reyes's voice. Bring her to the clinic. I'll have everything ready. Vincent ended the call and turned back to Sarah. We're going to get you somewhere safe. You'll have your baby under proper medical care and no one will find you. Relief flooded Sarah's face, but it was quickly replaced by concern. What about David? What about whoever is using your organization? That's my problem now. Vincent's voice carried the cold finality that had ended countless lives over the years. But first, we get you and your baby to safety. As if responding to his words, Sarah suddenly gasped, her hand flying to her stomach. The contraction was visible, her entire body tensing with pain that lasted nearly a minute. We need to go, Vincent said, already moving toward the door. Now. But as he reached for the handle, every light in the house went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, bathing everything in dim red light. Vincent's security system immediately came online, screens showing feeds from cameras positioned around his property. All the feeds showed the same thing: empty static. Someone had cut his surveillance. Someone was moving against him while he had Sarah in his house, while he was most vulnerable. Vincent pulled a gun from the drawer of his desk, checking the chamber with practiced efficiency. Sarah, I need you to listen to me very carefully. We're going to move to the safe room in the basement. Can you walk? Sarah nodded, though another contraction was already building. Vincent helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as they moved toward a hidden panel behind his bookshelf. The baby's coming, she whispered, pain making her voice tight. I can't wait much longer. You won't have to, Vincent promised, though he wasn't sure if he was lying. As they reached the hidden entrance to his safe room, Vincent heard the first sound that made his blood run cold. Footsteps on his roof. Professional footsteps. Measured, careful, tactical. Whoever was coming for them wasn't some random crew looking for easy money. These were specialists, and they'd found his house despite security measures that had kept him protected for decades. Vincent guided Sarah into the safe room, a reinforced space designed to withstand everything from explosions to prolonged siege. He activated the locks, sealing them inside with walls that could stop armor-piercing rounds. But as the heavy door closed behind them, Vincent realized something that chilled him more than any external threat. The people hunting Sarah weren't just after her anymore. By bringing her here, by protecting her, he'd made himself a target. And whoever was moving against him had been planning this for a very long time. Long time. The safe room was equipped with everything Vincent needed to survive a siege: weapons, communications equipment, medical supplies, food and water for weeks. But it wasn't equipped for childbirth. Sarah gripped the edge of a metal table, her breathing coming in sharp, desperate gasps. Another contraction seized her, stronger than before, and Vincent watched helplessly as she bit down on her lip to keep from crying out. Above them, the footsteps had multiplied. What started as careful movement across his roof had become a coordinated assault. Vincent counted at least 6 distinct patterns of movement, maybe more. These weren't street thugs or rival gang members. This was a military-style operation. How long between contractions? Vincent asked, though he had no medical training beyond basic first aid. 3 minutes, Sarah panted, her face slick with sweat. Maybe less. Vincent, this baby isn't waiting for a hospital. Vincent activated his emergency communication system, an encrypted network that connected him to his most trusted lieutenants. The screen flickered to life, showing the face of Marcus Romano. Vincent, what the hell is happening at your place? I've got reports of armed men surrounding your property. How many? At least a dozen. Professional-grade equipment, military tactics. My people are 20 minutes out, but these guys aren't waiting around. Marcus's voice was tense. Who did you piss off? Vincent looked at Sarah, who was gripping the table so hard her knuckles had gone white. I'll explain later. Right now I need you to patch me through to Dr. Reyes. Vincent, you need to evacuate. These people came prepared for war. I can't evacuate. I have a situation here that requires immediate medical attention. The screen split, and Dr. Reyes appeared alongside Marcus. Her expression was calm, professional, the kind of composure that came from years of treating emergency cases. Vincent, what's the medical situation? Pregnant woman in active labor. Contractions 3 minutes apart. I'm in my safe room, and we're under siege. Dr. Reyes didn't hesitate. I need you to gather clean towels, hot water if possible, and any sterile instruments you have. This baby is coming whether we're ready or not. Vincent moved quickly, pulling supplies from emergency medical kits. The safe room's water system was independent, fed by its own reservoir. He filled a basin with hot water, grabbed every clean cloth he could find. Sarah's scream cut through the air like a blade, not the controlled breathing she'd been managing, but raw, primal pain that spoke of a body no longer under conscious control. Vincent, Dr. Reyes's voice was urgent. I need you to help her into a comfortable position. The baby is crowning. Outside the safe room, Vincent heard the first explosion, not large enough to breach the reinforced walls, but significant enough to shake dust from the ceiling. They were testing his defenses, probing for weaknesses. Vincent knelt beside Sarah, following Dr. Reyes's instructions with hands that had killed men but had never brought life into the world. The irony wasn't lost on him. In a room designed for death, surrounded by enemies who wanted to destroy him, he was about to help deliver new life. I can see the head, Dr. Reyes said, her voice steady despite transmitting through a screen. Sarah, with the next contraction, I need you to push with everything you have. Sarah gripped Vincent's hand with surprising strength. Her eyes locked onto his, and in them he saw not just pain, but determination that reminded him of David Chen's loyalty. This woman would die before she let harm come to her child. The contraction built like a storm surge, and Sarah bore down with a force that seemed impossible for someone her size. Vincent found himself holding his breath, as if his own will could help bring this baby safely into the world. Perfect, Dr. Reyes encouraged. The head is out. One more push for the shoulders. Another explosion rocked the house above them, closer this time. Vincent's security monitors showed masked figures moving through his first floor, searching systematically. They had maybe 10 minutes before the attackers found the entrance to the safe room. Sarah's final push came with a sound that was part scream, part sob, part victory cry. And then, suddenly, impossibly, there was another person in the room. Vincent Torino had built an empire on calculated decisions and measured responses, but holding Sarah's newborn daughter in his arms, feeling the warmth of new life against his chest while enemies closed in around them, he understood that some moments transcend all logic. The baby's cry pierced through the chaos above, not just a sound, but a declaration that hope could survive even in the darkest places. Sometimes the most dangerous men discover their humanity in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes a single knock on a door can change everything, and sometimes protecting the innocent becomes the most powerful act of all.